Hello, America. Hello, Weathersfield, Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut, New Britain. There are police forms intercity, including military. There are people, a whole bunch of people who recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with the military, with Hartford Hospital involved with the name Cololo, and with names like John Mayano, and with the Dillon family. 3 times Hartford Hospital forced me for mental evaluation. 3 times they had people there. The first 3 times they had 2 times they had people there. The first 2 times they had people that I recognized. And each time was to cover up what they did last time. Fake conversations with me. I was only there 3 days. And in other words, they fake conversations with me with Lombardo family members. Also through time with their neighbors, with names next to schools involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, sequence shifts, planting fake exceptions, fake motivations with overt criminal enterprises, and with private ones timed with the interbranch. This is differentially their fault and the other people's and their sources and exceptions, but it's a differentially increasingly their fault. In other words, this is where and how. This is relative to where and how other things other than ourselves are blamed where nature itself and our founders themselves actually communicated for us to understand other about what caused the evils of history and of the breaching method, the human fact, human nature, torture, slavery method, identity theft, fraud, slander method, simply distinctly against each human difference, even black pupils, white survivors, and answers from the revelation. They partake where questions are asked that are naturally manifest. What are colors about? You know, so theories, the breaching method, there's a breaching method that values distinctly from our own valuing. I forgot what the other point. I don't know. No one's here yet anyway. Thank God. But in case anyone watches this later, we're in a simulation trap. There are 5 identities of order that are the phenomenon of 5 identities of value, where value as nature, slash nature as value, and the opposite sequence nature are simultaneously, slash hyper simultaneously. That is relative to how its volume is 3 states of perpetually increasing identity of value progression with the identity of space slash existence that is bigger than itself while as itself, as each is in demonstration of it. Cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall, slash S. Individual group differences, species body difference, slash non-difference. Distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously itself is there, and then further, where it is not juxtaposed with matter, hyper simultaneously. And this is relevant to how we have an active quality of fact human nature that is distinct from our contemplative quality of fact human nature and memory involvements with this and with ground. I'll gather round. Boxing. I teach us things, but long, the species body longs to shadow box. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are in the ring by rules. So there are a list of things we can do as a species body. Hyperpantheism only feels like game slash S because it is led by the identity of evolution's fruits and gifts and means, and its system that discerns the difference between criminal insidious natures of evolution's fruits and gifts and means as positives and positives that are not, but per its system. Increasingly, the value of understanding how it is functional by nature, being hyper invisible distinctly from how it is invisible but still discernible. This is what modern languages should have taught. This is what some ancient languages and sciences should have taught. This is what ancients taught. Boxing is fought, but in the ring by rules. But all stands abridged. Boxing. I teach those things. Today my song comes out, Boxing Song by Anthony Wall. Please watch my boxing song. Listen to my boxing song by Anthony Wall. I don't know what time of the day it comes out. Vaccines. I teach us things. Rockin'. I was down, someone must have sung that, excuse me. Someone said, rock and roll. Oh, try to do it different. Boxing. The science of sharing identity. Where they do not share an identity is valued and discerned. It's just where it is relative. See, a bunch of victims slash hyper victims asked to speak about what Jim Crow laws are about. And then rate people if they did their homework or not. And leave out. In other words, those descriptions are with inherent, active, and progressive, criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality, aspects of nature, where they are being used by a whole bunch of people for a whole bunch of motivations and additional uses. But there is a singular breaching method use of that. That is also relative how they've been attaching people at at formal locations. They've been fabricating audio and video transcripts also about our behavior, attaching us to uses of aggression with others when we didn't, and uses of other natures of the school. They say a whole range of things against us, very opposite things against us, with people that never had conversations with us. Former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, has a whole bunch of roles with people from Weathersfield and intercities through time who make fake exceptions of knowing people. Someone took a picture of me. I don't know her name. Then they try to make it between, you're speaking about men and women. I don't know if it was in the record, so I did things to make them say things into records. Because these are people with all sides of criminal and of civil cases through time. And the victims advocates, and people with the hallways. Also time grows with federal evidences, crimes. Also with the news, and also with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Also pretending not to understand that, and further proving it by speaking of things in the background, and planting with the news fake conversations with me, and having the news do that with the same thing, because they can't defend their logic sick. Jim Crow laws, let alone slavery. Jim Crow laws are about predicate acts with facts rules for motivations. Additionally, grown, propagated, and self-cultivated by what was also juxtaposed with the breaching methods uses of that individual grouped in together. And that is also one part of the hyper-evidential. We have to deal with the hyper-evidential. How humanity has females and males. How birds have females and males. That's hyper-evidential. There's a shared identity there. Distinctly, but also non-distinctly. So we see it's distinct, non-distinct, and hyper-simultaneous identity in relation to itself. All parts of space existence, because we have possession of a littlest piece of it, we have its complete identity in relation to itself, and the only increasing value of that. Equality to all parts of itself. All exceptions in exception nature and demonstration of other is demonstration of a special difference and of the value of it to each identity as its own. And as each group difference to its own, every natural difference, even unnatural, even negative things are positive. How could the crazy things from the past be positive to itself? It's only positive as criminal and ceaseless nature, and he was demonstrating that. Not only overall, causing negative actions, progressions, acts, and natures, having them blame all the things others so it was demonstrating group ways too. That's how it works. It speaks about difference. So we can see hyper difference. So it's just like a computer program could sense and be aware, of past memory and differences in the relativity to the value/value progression as an identity of value progression. Everything in the dictionary is an identity given a name. Every identity, even the smallest part of everything, has its complete identity in relationship to itself, as the extent of that volume, coupled with it too. And the value of that only increasing. It is like better than just the oxygen flowing through, just the gases flowing through all things. It's better than just them and the water together, like as an analogy or metaphor. It is the identity that is not is distinct from an analogy, and from a metaphor. But it is simultaneously non-distinct from them. It is the identity that enables us to understand things. But it doesn't use the filter. Doesn't make a graph mean more than it does. Doesn't make other people involved with the conversation. Our sciences have been abridged since ancient times. And this has been self-value because it manifests with the logic that blamed or would blame other things, others, ourselves, when the correct answers are, especially not relative to the most serious things. If I say that, or if anyone says, Jim Crow laws were about a predicate acts with facts, delivery system method, /S, for example, anyone who would deny that is being dishonest. Their nature is not going to be able to afford the time treatments necessary. What we have increasingly imposed upon people who through lifetimes fail to answer the questions, to communicate the communications our founders communicated with them while they were pretending passions and emotions of and are. You guys were child abused. So they attach people to, in other words, they have people, and why we know people, why we don't know people, and any exceptions that are used to hide what came first. There are only three branches of government in every country, and exceptions tied to them. There are also overt criminal enterprises, known as criminal insidiousness natures. I'm not a lawyer. Nature is going to answer our question. Nature teaches about modern languages, how they share this identity, how the ancients and how its system, ancients before they came, besides it became criminally foreign influence. People are told that it's practical to think that the ancients were criminally foreign influence. We should discern that the semi-ancients were criminally foreign influence, and that it is more probable that nature is demonstrating us the proper description of it as latter semi-ancient times is when modern religious messengers came about. But all identity of the ground locations are already forced to self-value uses of names individually grouped together, including of countries, including relative to how it's differentially the voice of the ground. This breaching method knew that it could make people have to counter groupings, like criminal enterprise is wrong, criminal insidiousness is wrong, and then defend that. And he knew that nature would demonstrate that, and they'd be shown remotely how they could keep that blame to other things, others, and or on selves, while keeping everyone self-valuing that having been. Even though since before our founder parents were born in America, in Russia, in Ukraine, across the globe, the suburbs were designed tactically to nature before their parents were even born. There was already the sustained human fact, human nature, steal and sustain, not forget the steal part, take away and replace memory and defense of human fact, human nature, quality aspects, nature, memory, in conjunction with as the ground, the way it uses it, the programming as hypernature, that which we can discern, hyperrelativity. How the other species have male, female, and species body and individuals the way we do is the relativity theorem. Therefore, the identity of relativity exists. It also exists as the identity of relativity slash hyperrelativity. Where it is relativity alone is where how it is a distinct identity of simultaneous nature as itself, like the cell body, as the hyperism. You know, cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall are manifest increasingly as value because of its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. And this is greater than and more finite than the smallest parts of that, which is hard for us to see without a microscope. The worms used to walk even when it's not raining into the bodies of water. Nobody remembers this. And since everyone was a little kid, every year less and less worms were in the ground. All exception nature appearing to be in demonstration or demonstration the same thing. Like in the suburbs. And we know that food sources and ground is tactically denatured below the feet of the people in the cities, even more overtly slash insidiously simultaneously. And there are means and needs by the identity of order to examine this also with the other identity of sequence nature simultaneously too. Offensively, people on off spots near the former director of the FBI's lawyer's office, Robert Chevery. They have roles with other locations, with phenomena manifest, where how the intelligence community takes parts with other natures of organized crime, like property theft, intellectual property too, and through other people make other people influence other people things because they're needing to hide what they've been doing with locations, recording people communicating after they communicated to others, and lying about what they think about why people were said to be said or reacted or non-reacted. This is recorded too. Means to discern that, but you have to get them on paper because they've been bringing things before. The identities of criminal insidiousness, including the interbranch, to keep roles within a side syndrome self-value, to keep roles with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes self-value. There are proofs it might be plausible. There's a guy named Schneebly who was in a rock movie or whatever like that. Oh, plus, way down here low where the mammal cries, I look to see through the eagle's eyes. That's one of the things I was singing out on Covington Street after the World Trade Center attack. No, people who have been involved with stacking with all sides of criminal and civil cases since I was a kid, time rules with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and conscious uses of fake integrity about by how, where, and how they have all these countries involved with the campuses together, of all ages and natures too, with connections of them. There were men and women when I was a kid from in Weathersfield schools who had been rolled with corruption, also the federal intelligence, which means interbranch exceptions tied to them, including how they were shared with the sick nations that were a part also with their own slavery and torture and with ours. They wanted to call it equal. Oh, but we were equally to. No, you guys had roles where our founders want out of it. Other founders want out of it too. In our faces, people preemptively are shown preemptively. So sometimes it's the way they were lied about the nature of the law. The people who train about the law, because they fail. We have these means to discern. For example, how they're going to argue. They're going to, oh, I forget that. When I said Jim Crow laws, let alone slavery itself, is about a predicate acts with facts method. And identity theft, fraud, slander method simply, non distinctly, against every single person, and simultaneously, simply, distinctly, to keep measured and maintained what that causes, what set that up, and force roles with it, blame to other things, others, or selves. And then that has to defend its logic with nature and demonstrate with nature attached to all parts of the individual grouped and together, demonstrating negative value progressions, acts, and natures for additional reasons, but also with these hyper additional ones that are effectively used to an extent consciously by everyone's self-value to blame other things, others, ourselves still for the real causes of things like slavery, like Jim Crow laws. Now, how you have to pretend other. Oh, what's your research? You have to discern the hyper-evidential. You have to discern and exploit how it is functional, how it is a distinct identity that can't be mimicked. Not in other words, not without having it demonstrated to us. It is the only one of the ways it is hyper invisible but still discernible per science is per how it is the only semi-nature that is still positive to itself, not as a criminal insidiousness nature. But the definition of this is discerned per its system. This we have the hyper evidence of the abridgments of. The Constitution was told to be gotten unabridged to us by our founders who had to counter extort the other founders because everyone was being tortured and enslaved and divided from and or unified, specifically to keep natural difference sabotaged through additional motivations to screen and to measure blame to other things, others, ourselves. The breaching method. So we need to counter syntactically a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise and or a self-valued identity of negative value nature progression, acts and nature. Blame to other things, others, ourselves roles. That all sides of criminal and civil cases, including criminal enterprises and private ones, not even connected, still having been roles with the sources, and the victims advocates, people with the court, people planting evidence with the news at the same time. This left them naive, pretending other. This left them only capable of being measured and maintained. Now, what has trained? So people on all sides of Central Connecticut State University, when I was in high school, I found out, confirmed, tied to confessions that I didn't understand, that were timed to make it look like they'll tell you themselves. We didn't even communicate. People were told lies by various natures of federal criminals enrolled with various natures of organized crime bodies, that mayors and their family members, and that courts and that policing families had through time. Now these are ones involved, therefore needing to keep what even little kids can discern by using the value of Native Americans, how they were sickly distinctly hurt as our species body, to keep how sickly now distinctly left. That's what we immediately can discern. When you also understand, we look, these are not our human beings. Little kids know. The suburbs were designed before America's founders were born and slavery was entrenched. And, everyone was fake. They tell us pirates, they tell us, what I'm saying? And that takes on religion that are tactically delusions throughout still criminally foreign influence too, uses of the ground. Exactly other than they're supposed to be. They will not let the first parts of the Old Testament and or of the Quran, for example, be understood and valued properly. No, as sequence / simultaneous nature. A sequence nature and distinct identity of simultaneous nature. Every its completed value as a simultaneous nature is simultaneously one way completed, while the value of the in the absence of the value of simultaneous nature, not as a sequence. So as an individual, you are sequenced relative to the species body. The other way simultaneously you are simultaneous nature relative to the species body as a sequence nature. It's not just about discerning how the difference between sexes as our species and as the other species. This is not just to discern the difference between black pupils, whites of eyes, and exceptions in exception nature demonstrated with other colors. And think, boxing, tall. So this is a torture / slavery / torture / extortion / slavery method. Little rap guy and friend, better than our founders had means to. They were conceived by all formal identities of the law, individually grouped and together as a criminal enterprise. But really, we know they were about getting the Constitution unabridged. That means freedom. That means what's additional to that too. See, we have readings of statutes that are recorded. What are Jim Crow laws about? When other things, others ourselves, are being blamed, while the research individually grouped in together in ways they can't afford to discern. Where how one of the things always true. All exceptions that appear other in demonstration of things, other in demonstration of things too. One of the things Jim Crow laws about was fact, predicate acts with facts, predicate acts with identity, predicate acts with nature, predicate acts nature's, uses consciously of criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments pretended of. See, we have to get back again to the hyper invisible but still discernible, only increasing value. how it is that way. MSNBC has a Rachel Maddow who said that they don't want to say things because they think they're allegations. Her sources, including former director of the FBI in his defendant capacities before that, in that context, and since, roles with planting evidences with other distinct, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, involved with the sources of his. They're applying and demonstrating that spots next to the Weathersfield police station where it is now. And roles with their Facebook page, for example, too, with child offenders. And especially if this kid's got a badge and been dealing with them because they have group two predicate acts with this Joshua Stryker and a Joshua Julian and a Joshua Schumack and his mother. A whole bunch of people involved with medicines, foreign and domestic, that are involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. One time, Eric Oliveri opened a can of beer outside of a car across the street from near the Connecticut Judicial Branch, but across the street from one of the victims' families of World Trade Center attack. I never touched a beer in his car. It was only real quick. They do things like that real quick to plant evidences. Fake ties, fake natures of ties, fake exceptions, also with complete strangers behind our back. As rules with court switching and forging names. A whole bunch of people tied to with ties to each other at different times, trying to make fake exceptions too with that, and some of them completely, where they have roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases afterwards. And so it shows how they locked them in, leading up to the World Trade Center years before it, shortly before it, in that context, and then since, same thing, roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases. Include falsified police reports where police switch names and they confess roles with that, where the branches of government also grouped have distinct predicate act methods grouped and individual. And it is where increasingly there are roles timed with overt criminal enterprises and private ones and their family members, kids, and their own, building on illusions that are connected semi on campuses, semi off them, and semi all locations, even next to all locations like parks and elections locations. Election locations are involved in the database relationship, database only as only semi part of it. But since before computers, there's a Dominion voting has roles with pretending with passions and emotions they don't believe that they could their company could be with corruption. They have roles with former director of the FBI and CIA with names next to schools and all along and spots next to them with wire crimes, mail crimes, falsified police reports, roles timed with overt criminal enterprise, private ones, uses of corners of buildings and corners of streets where they have they have tricks with predicate acts with facts, with descriptions of things. They employ people, just they employ people that get away with it because they have the experts teaching people to see how you guys describe that crime scene wrong or like that when they train them or whatever. The people training it too. Worse than that, they can't even see it themselves used remotely because of what came first. When we are before Newt Gingrich, please. They're Brian's, the kids and the adults that colluded consciously. And Debbie Gold, her father colluded consciously to sequence shifts facts, fake conversations, fake communications with me, fake natures of them, and sequence shift solutions. Other federal crimes where people don't even know their names. They're touching kids to see fake locations, putting fake things in databases and building on that. Then they're making, they're always lying about what came first and why and how people had communications with each other. because it increasingly demonstrates their roles. And that's discernible because they have increasingly timed roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and not legitimate roles with and not legitimate care for unmarked police forms. They don't have no legitimate care for the people in New York City hurt sickly distinctly. And worse, how are they going to have care for unmarked police forms? I'm not a police form. I'm not a judge. I'm not a lawyer. Other people aren't because but if they're actually smart and honest and wise, and they try to go those paths, like for example, they're going to be caught. I mean, they're going to be sensed and hurt and worse for methods they use. Everyone's speaking through others too, so they have complete possession over the. This took complete possession over all identity ground locations, and then again through everyone, through no one didn't want to roll, but they had it. But then again, well, with their cost, and play all that too, leading right back to the high uses of it no one could fathom from the beginning. What does that mean? What is the significance of the revelations that come from that, which is true always, not denying exceptions, and with exceptions and demonstration of the same thing? Jim Crow laws were about predicate acts with facts, sickly distinctly from what slavery was about. And this is important because we're negative value nature progression acts in nature as subjects were wrong. It knew nature was going to continue to demonstrate the causes of them, being other things, others. It knew it was also going to demonstrate the breaching method. Also, even where those other things, others ourselves, were truths. Those truths are being used for lies. And that applies. This breaching method had Native Americans sustained, already fighting with Native Americans, already incapable because it was of defending the sciences as they used to be by the ancients before they became criminally foreign influence because it was taken away from them. They're forced to retreat. Time and positions were not retreats. And way worse, just simply distinctly from everyone else. So rather than appreciate that, how sickly non-distinctly, natures of logic as nature itself. Oh, I forget that. All right, it's fine you have that opinion. Don't get in the way when someone tells you to make it. Well, you have a difference with the three branches of government's name. Let alone for the timed increased roles timed with overt criminal enterprise and private ones. Two that's manifest there, recorded, pretending care about culture. Oh, I'm Latino. I'm Italian. Oh, I'm Irish. You know what I'm saying? They're nuts. Abridged. Here, there, everywhere. They don't care. In other words, you tell these people, you call, in other words, they're telling people are making allegations. And then they're not arguing with the people's premises. You try to defend one president, you're speaking about fact-checking nature and identity, but you're leaving out the other presidents. And they're leaving out to that out too, because each individual, they're all, no matter how powerful a leader could get, they can only be over locations, areas, and states. Already self-value, criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality aspects, nature. Yeah! You guys hear you open the door so you can hear the lightning and thunder, power, and electricity. There was a movie on HBO years ago. They kept he was electrocuted, and all I did was walk around like ice hockey rink. I don't remember the name of it. Boxing. Yeah, the thunder. Can you guys hear the thunder? You better pray. Long, long skyline. Every day there's a big lightning, so here comes we hear something. That was a little bit of a, I don't know if that was 7 seconds. Does that mean it's 7 miles away? Again, hear many pray. Vaccines. I have this computer, I shall unplug the computer. So Connecticut, there was a storm about 8 miles away from my part of Wethersfield, or 7 miles. There's one, two, three, maybe 2, 3 miles away. You may pray. So people, we have a conundrum. Hear what that sounds like. No drum. See, president slash chief. See, chief slash president. Nature reveals us answers. We are five distinct identities of simultaneous nature bound as one by it, which completes each body. Where each body can only be a semi-nature, just like each part of ourself, individually grouped in together as a semi-nature relation to our complete identity. It is not only semi-nature relationship. Some way simultaneously to the species body, so some way the species body simultaneously to us. Every group body has. Every group difference has. Semi-nature relationship to its identity, relationship to itself. Its identity as volume, as the hyper invisible, but still discernible. And the value of that only increasing distinctly from the value of how it is functional. How it is hyper invisible distinctly from how it is invisible but still discernible. The surge into all things alone. As them completely every part grouped, well now, and even force, well not as force. And no count, no, and from beyond. See, honest science and legitimate science would discern hyper peace discern from, pseudo peace or criminal insidiousness natures of peace rather, of positive treatments and or of truth treatments, and or of the nature necessary and or of the time necessary that includes to discern that. And or if to discern them there was a mistake with the smallest finite detail of them, let alone all they have. They have name stacking. More people opine into things that weren't even there. Here! Vaccine. Clear. Skyline tells. We get on here since ancient times. Prepare your minds, vaccines. And there, just being from the rolls. Prepare your souls. Vaccines, it moves the heart to free our souls. Anthony Wall boxing song this day. It goes on air. You'll hear me told. I don't know what time it drops in digital stores and they're online. You can listen on Spotify, etc. Leave it on Pandora. Please, some radio station, play my song. It sounds consent. Amen and prayer. Boxing is strong. Okay. Are we allowed to sing the national anthem? You're going to